By the way, this dude is a summa cum laude graduate of Bristol College who continued his studies at Bryant University. He's got multiple professional certifications, including Smith System Advanced Driving Concepts Instructors, DOT Hazardous Materials Instructor, and ISO 9001 and 14001 Internal Auditor. Michael Lasko joins us. He's the Assistant General Manager and Vice President of EHS and Quality at Boyle Transportation. He's got 24 years of industry experience. You don't get all those certifications overnight. He began his career as a driver. That's right, same as you guys, before advancing into leadership roles in operations and safety. Since he has joined Boyle in 2015, TCA Fleet Safety Grand Prize in 2017. Best fleets to drive for 11 consecutive years. Notably, Boyle has not had a preventable, recordable accident since 2019. He is the immediate past chairman of the Truckload Carriers Association Safety and Security Division and is a board member of the Trucking Association of Massachusetts. For the purposes of this conversation, which is about culture and safety and training and basically how they are all interconnected, Michael Lasko, the Assistant General Manager and Vice President of EHS and Quality Control at Boyle Transportation, joins us today. You can find all of that at boyletransport.com. And by the way, we'll talk about other stuff as well. But good morning and happy pre-trip Thanksgiving to you, Michael.
Good morning, Jimmy. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I don't have any complaints whatsoever. And when I got your notes, I'm going to give you one line that you gave me, and I want you to kind of expand from there because, man, in regards to giving Thanksgiving, here it is. Your life, your career, and your well-being matter. And that's kind of the governing principle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's our approach at Boyle Transportation. We don't hire numbers. We hire people, and we want to keep those people working with us for a long time, and hopefully we see them from the day we hire them, and right through to retirement, and they become part of the family, and everybody that's on our team matters. So it's that's kind of our investment in our drivers, and it means a lot to us, and we take it to heart.
I was interested too because you say the training's not a checkbox, it's a safety system. I wanted to kind of take that in another direction and say it is a cultural immersion. That the idea that in many ways any training that a company engages in has to represent its values, but you're also not just training people for how to kind of drive properly or drive in your way. And to some degree, what you're doing is you're saying this isn't just how we want you to physically maneuver yourself. These are the values we kind of want to instill in you. I mean, can you kind of expand upon that?
Yeah, well, like I said, we invest heavily in our professional drivers, and we kind of go with a constant learning approach. And like I said, our goal is to hire the best drivers that are out there and keep them on board and invest in them and keep them happy. And so that way we're not playing this, revolving door game that a lot of carriers find themselves stuck in. So, I think drivers appreciate when they know that they work for a carrier that, values them as a person and sees them as, an individual rather than just a steering wheel holder, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5A, that goes a long way with drivers. Drivers don't want to work for a company like that. Has been my experience, and that was my experience when I was a driver. Put me at a company that cares about me as a person, that cares about my family, and cares about me getting to that next level in my career, and I'm a happy guy. And I think that's true with with most of your professional drivers that are out there listening to this today. They're looking for a company that values them.
Okay. Give me a second to unpack this here because you guys really focus on individualized training. The idea of meet the man, meet the woman with the moment. It hit them in their particular skill set, needs, and all that kind of stuff. How do you create a foundational approach? I want to distinguish between cookie cutter, where one size fits all, and a foundational set of things of expectations that at the same time is tailored to an individual driver's need. How do we create both a methodology of teaching that is consistent while at the same time being adaptable for each individual human that joins the company?
Yeah, great question. So, these days there is so much technology that's out there in the trucks that you really get this holistic view of the drivers that you have. and the good things that they do, and maybe some of the things that that's out there that they can work on. And I feel that you get a lot of buy-in with drivers when you can sit down and have a conversation with them as professionals and say, hey, here's what we're seeing, right? And the drivers usually actually lead this conversation, believe it or not, at Boyle, because most of the time they're checking their stuff more frequently than I am. And I'll get these calls from folks, and they're like, hey, can we talk about X, Y, and Z? I logged into the app and I saw this, and I wanted to kind of talk about that. And you really start to build a great relationship with the driver, right? And you can kind of take a look at some of the issues that are going on, or even some of the positives, and develop a plan for each one of those folks. And hey, maybe it's something where they need some skills development, and we have some online training, or maybe they're at a terminal and they want some hands-on training. They want you to show them whatever it is, right? Whatever the topic may be. We can kind of tailor our approach to what works well for that driver, rather than, and I think you nailed it right on the head, Jimmy, when you said the cookie cutter stuff. That's more of a check the box kind of endeavor, right? You got to, there's certain training that you just have to do. And sometimes, companies get into this habit where they do like a knee jerk reaction. Hey, five folks had a accident of this type. Well, let's train everybody on this particular thing. Well, on the surface, that sounds good, and you're certainly checking a box. But if you're one of the, other, 4,000 drivers that didn't need that training, it can be a little bit off-putting, because that training isn't necessarily related to an issue or a skill that you need to develop. So when you can sit down and have those kind of conversations with folks, it just automatically creates buy-in, where they know that A, you matter, right? As a person, my company cares about me. And two, they're going to do the right thing by me, right? They're not going to just jam something down my throat because it checks a box. They're going to come up with something that works well for me and helps me grow as a professional. And it's all about getting that buy-in. And I think this approach, our approach that we have here, is kind of does well with that.
And by the way, I don't know the answer to this. That's why I like this job. Unlike an attorney where I have to know the answers to the questions that I'm asking, I get to ask questions I don't know the answer to. One of the training methodologies that I've really become fond of, having kind of gone through a lot of different kind of programs, is when you have a situation where there's a company accident or a company screw up that affects a lot of people, but you also know there are people here who are not guilty of this, who absolutely could have handled this absolutely appropriately. I've known people who have gone and said, okay, well, who are the 5 people that actually do this well? And can I get them to kind of serve as mentors? I've actually had people in workplace accidents that have happened come in and say, look, rather than kind of shame people, I brought the 5 following employees in who are really good at this kind of stuff, and they're going to show you how to do it. And I'm asking that question as a way of everyone becomes do you try to create an atmosphere where everyone in their own way is a trainer, so that it becomes a matter of sometimes before things get out of hand and the big accident happens, I'll just make up names, Bob and Steve. Steve has a mistake, he keeps screwing up. Rather than the trainer or the troubleshooter always stepping in, Steve then knows he can kind of step in and go, hey, can I give you a hand there? And that's another question. Is it important to empower the people who just do the driving and the working to understand that they have a voice in improving the culture and how people respond in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So, really touch on a couple of things I'm excited to talk about. So at Boyle Transportation, we do have a mentor program, and it's exactly kind of how you described it. We have some really, high achieving, drivers that work for us that, care a lot about the company and care about the, this industry in general. And we use them as mentors. So whenever we hire team drivers. So whenever we hire a team, we pair them up with another mentor team. And that means that, that new hire has support available, not just through the company, through, reaching out to our operations department or reaching out to our safety department, which is always available, but they have someone, a peer of theirs, that they can reach out to and get some support. So we start there, right, by recognizing our top performers, and, they make a little extra money for doing it, and they get some, some incentives for doing it. And that's really worked well. And I think, drivers typically relate better to other drivers rather than talking to someone from management, just a level of comfort there. So we try to embrace that as much as we can. And on top of that, kind of going a step further, we have a number of driver coaches that work in our safety department that are all former Boyle Transportation professional drivers. So, these are folks that, they're reaching out to our active workforce and, coaching them on some things that maybe they saw in the camera system, or reaching out to them to remind them about a credential that they have to renew. So it kind of drives that buy-in. If you're driving for the company and you get a call from somebody who has spent time behind the wheel and they know what they're talking about, and they can give you some good solid advice and tips, and know the ins and outs, how to get in and out of a customer and whatnot. It's just a number of resources that we make available to the folks that drive for us. So, I like to say we try to keep as many tools in the toolbox as we can, and there's two of them, mentorship and driver coaches that have actually been drivers.
Okay, this is you guys, you have drivers that move hazmat, pharma, defense, high security cargo, and of course, just being a general over-the-road driver is not the same thing. All right. So I'm kind of curious in regards to not just talent scouts in regards to recruiting, but internal talent scouts in the company. Sometimes people have an urge to drive a certain kind of thing. You want to make sure you can get in there. But how do you guys have a culture where you can spot people and say, hey, you're terrific over the road. I'm noticing some things about you. What is it? Rather than, pointing out what's wrong with people all the time, or even looking for corrective action, being like, good God Almighty, she can drive. Good God Almighty, he's got a handle on this. He might actually be good for blank. How do you guys let people know in your company that they might have a skill set or a gift that allows them to actually make more money, have more opportunities, make their way up the food chain?
Yeah, great question. So, at Boyle Transportation, we're really heavy on engagement, and sometimes that's kind of a weird thing for folks when they first come aboard, because I can tell you my experience as a driver. Usually, if you're hearing from the company, if you're getting a call from the safety department or from dispatch, 9 times out of 10, it's not really a warm and fuzzy conversation. So we try to make sure that there's a level of balance there. You're not just going to hear from the safety department at Boyle when you did something wrong, right? And I feel like that's a pitfall that far too many companies get involved in. We're going to reach out just as often to let drivers know when we see they did something right. And with the technology that we have, in the truck, right, we have an outward-facing camera, it's looking down out the windshield, and we have cameras on the sides of the truck. So that way we can capture anything that occurs alongside of us. Oddly, most of our accidents happen on the side of our vehicle. So, we capture a lot of data, and it gives us the ability to call up a driver and say, hey, thanks. We appreciate what you did here, and you did a great job, rather than, hey, let's talk about something you got to work on or you got to fix, right? Those conversations happen too. But if that's all you hear, that can also be off-putting. Right. I always say one of the things about being a truck driver is you don't hear please, thanks, and good job anywhere near as much as you should. And, I feel like we've created a really solid system at Boyle where we're able to do those things in a meaningful way and recognize drivers. And we do it at, a number of different things. We'll send out fleet-wide, emails to kind of trumpet some really, good achievements that drivers have had. We'll recognize drivers with some, incentives, whether it's financial or some kind of gift card or something. We go out of our way to make sure drivers know that we appreciate them. And, it really, it's kind of the technology these days has just enabled us to do these things. And, we try to make sure, like I said, we keep a fair and balanced kind of approach on it, where we're not just calling drivers with the bad stuff. We're making sure we call them with the good stuff just as much.
This is going to sound like me actually living in Moneyball land with Billy Bean here. And like I said, you might not even know the answer to this, or it might not be your area. But, okay, so data is often used as a tool for improvement, and of course that means a tool for criticism. I mean, you're kind of suggesting here that data or accumulated information can also be used as a tool to kind of go, let's go back and look and see, that, we haven't had any problems with Frank. Frank has been terrific behind the wheel, but we haven't even seen anything, though, in regards to Frank, because he just flies under the radar doing his job. Let's go back and look at the data and then be able to say, hey, Frank, we just wanted to let you know, we never really say anything to you. We took a look at this stuff, and there's a reason why you're excellent, and we just wanted to say thank you. And then the possibilities for them open up. Is it possible when you look at data, because of the question I asked earlier, how do you figure out if somebody actually maybe might have a unique set of skills, to be able to look at specific numbers or specific bits of information and say, based on the evidence, this is actually the profile of the people who drive hazmat or the people who drive really kind of high secure cargo, and say your data matches up with the people we have working over here. We're going to move you over there. Am I making sense? I know I sound like I'm talking, analytics, John Smoltz kind of stuff here, but just kind of curious.
No. I think that it's a really good question. And in most companies, there's probably some differentiation. Like, we don't necessarily keep our drivers segmented. So when we hire folks, we put them through a, pretty comprehensive 5-day orientation, followed by them being paired up with mentors for, I believe it's 90 days. And then, we have regular check-ins with, the safety department and operations and maintenance, right? Just to make sure everything's on the up and up. But when we hire our folks, everybody comes in after they complete the orientation. They're qualified to do any line of business that we have. So it isn't like we have, dedicated defense or dedicated pharma. We make sure all of our drivers have the training and expertise to fill all of those roles. So to make that happen, the company has to pony up, and we pony up with investing in our drivers, and we make sure that they're competent and capable of doing any one of these lines of business, which adds value to them. Hey, even if they decide Boyle ain't my cup of tea, guess what? They have this skill set now, right? We gave them the training, we invested in them, and kind of enabled them to get to that next level of their career. So, and I feel like companies that do that well, and do it with sincerity, those are the companies that really keep retention, right? So at Boyle, our retention numbers are outstanding. I think right now the average rate of turnover in the industry is up in the 90s, and we're below 20%. So when we hire folks, they tend to stay on board because they see that the company values them, right? And we're investing in them, and we're doing the things that we can to make their lives better. And we kind of try to do that through a number of ways, not just through training and interactions, but, we kind of give our drivers a voice at the table. We have a professional driver advisory committee that meets every month. And, those guys, my hat's off to them, because they have really moved the needle at Boyle Transportation over the years with things that they've asked for. So, we make sure our drivers have a voice at the table too. But yeah, kind of back to the original question, we don't necessarily segment our lines of business. We make sure all of our drivers are hired and trained and qualified to operate in any of those lines of businesses.
Yeah, and like I said, the idea that they can kind of move and shake in those directions makes a big difference. And by the way, as I said before, 2025 best fleets to drive for. They've been doing that for 11 consecutive years. They are also one of Women in Trucking's top companies for women to work for in transportation. And sets up my next question in regards to a training environment, in regards to the mentor stuff. You talk about the idea of having mentors. Is it more of a figure it out as you go along kind of thing, which, by the way, there's a methodology of working that really makes sense there? Or do you guys try to target saying this specific trainer should be working with this person? Or do you try to kind of create a mix of that, of kind of start off early, kind of feeling your way through, and then have people gravitate towards or assign towards a particular driver to help them take the next step to becoming Boyle kind of quality?
Yeah, well, we try to put some thought into who we're assigning to which mentors, right? So we try to make it so it's as seamless as possible. So, kind of give you an idea. We're not going to put, ideally, we're not going to put a younger, late 20s, mid 20s age driver from Texas with, our, 60-year-old driver from Massachusetts, right? Different cultures, different eras. Different lingo, different slang. We try to pair everybody up with somebody that's gonna make sense for them and just kind of be a natural fit. And on top of that, we're providing those mentors with some feedback right out of orientation. We give very hands-on, specific training on all the pieces of equipment that we're going to operate, and all the different ins and outs of all the lines of business that we do, and we share that data those observations with the mentor. So give you an idea, we do some flatbed training. We have, some limited flatbed operations. And hey, maybe there's somebody that kind of struggled with, the tarping aspect. So we're going to let the mentor know, hey, get with them on tarping. They're going to be doing this load on Monday, and they're going to need, maybe a little quick walkthrough with some things that they need to keep an eye out for. So again, it gets back to that individualized, specific approach. And I can't stress enough. That's something that I feel that most drivers buy into immediately, because nobody wants to be a number. Nobody wants that one size fits all, hey, I'm just a steering wheel holder, cookie cutter approach. When folks feel like you're recognizing them as an individual and value them as a person, that's kind of the winning recipe.
Yeah, and it also forces the rest of the industry's hand. I don't think people realize the impact of this, and the idea that we joke about this all the time, and we joke in a deadly serious way about the fact is the problem with really good training for those people who are bad actors in the space is when people are really well trained, they know their worth. That once a driver is properly trained and he or she understands all that it is they have to do and how to do that well, they understand that they're only going to work for people who actually understand their worth. The other way you kind of go about doing it too is creating a space where their lifestyle and their needs of home are kind of met too. And I was kind of curious from, with Thanksgiving coming up and so much family and so much friendship heading our way in less than 24 hours, I was kind of curious what kind of initiatives you guys take at Boyle. I mean, simply putting people together in advisory committees and all that stuff in and of itself gets conversation flowing and gets an atmosphere of collegiality going on. But what kind of steps do you take to make sure that work doesn't need to be about the work, but about the enjoyment of the work and a purpose-driven life?
Yeah, great question. So, we make a lot of different methods available for our drivers to stay connected and communicate not just with management and, the various departments within the company, but amongst themselves, amongst their peers, because the drivers that are listening to this know, usually the best information is coming from the folks that are sitting right behind the wheel, right? So I might get a call about, hey, how do I get into this specific customer? Well, driver X has the best information. I might be able to give you something on the surface, but if you really want the best info, I'm going to connect you with the driver. So it's really kind of developed a very strong community within the company, where our drivers all, kind of know and support each other, and they get, support from the company in the process, right, as that goes along. So I feel like, we have a lot of healthy things that are going on. It's a strong culture. The drivers, really, really love it. They support each other. That gets management excited. That makes us want to support them even more. And, you find out when you put everybody puts their heads together on a problem, usually you find the best solution. And a lot of times those best solutions come right from our drivers. And that's a product of the culture that we have.
You're not going to believe this. We're almost out of time. And I always make sure we leave a few moments at the end to kind of talk about what you do for fun, what you're going to be doing the next couple of days. And what does Thanksgiving look like for you, Mike?
Oh, geez. Well, Thanksgiving is me hosting a dinner at the house with the family, and looking forward to it. We get some relatives from out of town that came in, so it's going to be an ordeal at the house for sure. So that's me. And hey, real quick, I just wanted to say to all the drivers that are over the road right now, I want to give thanks to you guys. You're out there doing the hard work, and you're away from your home, you're away from your families. It's not lost on us, and we appreciate you, and a very, very happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for everything that you're doing.
Michael Lasko is, of course, the Assistant General Manager and Vice President of EHS and Quality at Boyle Transportation. You can go to driveboyle.com /apply if you're looking for maybe a change in direction, and boyletransport.com is where the action is as well. Happiest of Thanksgivings to you. Thank you for a very informative and really kind of fun conversation. Nice way to kind of end the business side of this show on the business side of this week. Thank you, Michael. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Jimmy. It was a pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving.